Hello, good morning, Year 10. Today, what we're going to look at is really the final piece in the jigsaw in the story that we've been looking at, which is the road to the Second World War. So we've looked at all of the steps that led up to the final sort of blow in 1939, September 1939, with the Nazi invasion of Poland. But the month before that, what was really the trigger for that event was the agreement between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union that neither would attack the other. Now, at the time, this was an earth shattering event for a number of reasons, and it took the whole world by surprise, and it made it very clear to the Allies that a war on a huge scale was now inevitable. So, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to write down the title. How important was the Nazi-Soviet Pact, and essentially how significant a cause was it for the outbreak of the Second World War? And then I want you just to answer that question. What is a pact? So that's a phrase a word you might not be familiar with. Write it down, the definition, and then what sort of people normally make pacts with each other. So just pause the video and write your thoughts for that question, please. Okay, so you should have written a pact is an agreement, a formal agreement usually between people who agree or get along. That's who normally makes these pacts. Um, let's go back a year. All right. This cartoon by again the British cartoonist David Lowe, who we're now becoming very familiar with, is from almost a year before the Nazi-Soviet Pact. And it shows standing in the doorway Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, and then you see the globe here in the middle of the room, and around the globe you have, of course, Adolf Hitler. You have the British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain. You have the French Prime Minister Edouard Daladier, and of course you have here Benito Mussolini, the Italian dictator. And this caption here is coming from Stalin, and he says, "What? No chair for me?" What I want you to do is take a minute, have a look at this cartoon, and then I want you just to think, what could it mean? What is the message of this cartoon? So pause the video and write your answer to that question, please. Okay, so you should have written that Joseph Stalin in this cartoon is shown as someone who feels like he's being left out, particularly left out of the discussions that were taking place in that year about the future of Europe, and that the Allies, France and Britain, had conspired with the fascist dictators Hitler and Mussolini to carve up parts of the world. And we know they did this with regards to Czechoslovakia. We know that they did this with regards to Abyssinia. And the Soviet Union at this point is feeling very, very isolated. And that's why this cartoon is very powerful for our lesson today, because it gives you the prime reason why Joseph Stalin, the communist, the avowed enemy of fascism and Nazism, would reach the point in 1939 where he would feel that it was in his country's best interest to make a formal pact and agreement with Nazi Germany. Okay, so what I want you to do now is in the folder, I'd like you to open up the information sheet. It will look like this. Yeah, so there's about 4 paragraphs in there. I want you to have a read through of this. It's called the Nazi-Soviet Pact Info. And I want you to answer these 3 questions. Who signed the pact? Why was the pact signed? What were the terms of the pact? And then there's another question at the bottom of that sheet you need to do as well. Okay, so this is a British cartoon from Punch magazine from October 1939, a couple of months after the pact. A really fascinating cartoon there because you can see Hitler here and Stalin, both of them, represented as sort of lovers. They're married, in this cartoon. The wedding cake is bedecked in both Soviet and Nazi symbology. You can see the hammer and sickle here at the bottom, the Nazi swastika, and so forth. And the caption is a very simple one. Sorry, no, this is not a British cartoon. It's from an American newspaper. The caption is very simple. Wonder how long the honeymoon will last. It was not going to last very long. Rudely broken in June 1941, when the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union. But everyone at the time knew that this was an agreement which was not going to last, because they were such declared enemies. They spent the previous decade, Hitler's whole career was built on anti-communism. He presented himself to the German people as the defender of Germany from the forces of Bolshevism, as he called it, or communism. And obviously, Stalin believed that Hitler was an enemy of the workers and that he was a tool of the capitalists to oppress the working people of the world. And also the fact that the Nazis were such enemies of the Soviet Union created a mutual antipathy, a mutual hatred for the other. So that's another reason there. So here we can see the German foreign minister, Joachim von Ribbentrop, shaking hands with Stalin. What I'd like you to do here is just think what could be going through their minds. This was a historic moment. These two nations were avowed enemies. What could be going through their minds? Are these real, genuine smiles? What are they thinking? Just write your thoughts for that, please. Here we are. And when you've done that, I want you just to have a look at this cartoon. This is after the invasion of Poland. This dead body here represents the nation of Poland. What happened in September was, and it was a hidden clause within the Nazi-Soviet pact, was that the Soviet Union would invade from the east. Nazi Germany would invade from the east. The Soviet Union would come in from the east, and they would divide up Poland, as you can see here. Hitler doffing his cap to Stalin, saying, "The scum of the earth, I believe," whilst Stalin reciprocates the gesture and says, "The bloody assassin of the workers, I presume." So we can see there's no love lost between these two, but they have a mutual goal, and that is the division of Poland that will follow. So once you've finished all that, you're done for the day. Well done.